mistakenly, unwittingly, we unleashed the Islamic State upon the region and upon ourselves. Now, it became an accident of our own doing. It's a direct result of the invasion of Iraq. And it turns out that the bitter historical irony is that the very thing we say we went there to prevent is the very thing we created. It was Al-Qaeda who attacked the United States 9/11. But by going to Iraq, we provided a platform for a new revolutionary kind of holy war to emerge that's far worse than Al-Qaeda itself. And that's simply because we went in and we removed a regime that wasn't a particularly pleasant regime to begin with, but it was holding certain forces in check. And we removed that and created a vacuum, and one man stepped into that vacuum, a Jordanian militant by the name of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. And almost single-handedly, almost from nothing, he created what we now call the Islamic State. It's had various names, but he created it. And I was there in August 2003 in Baghdad, just a few blocks away, when they launched their first ever attack, which was a car bombing on the Jordanian embassy. It was the first car bombing ever in Iraq, and the first of so many that followed. In a nutshell, in 2004, these guys who went on to become the Islamic State, back then they were called Tawhid wal Jihad, Unity and Holy War, were slowly taking over the entire insurgency. And one of its first signature moments was there in the centre of Sydney, what would essentially be the equivalent, the centre of Baghdad, what would essentially be the centre, the city of Sydney. They took over that neighbourhood. That's a neighbourhood that was within easy mortar range of the US Embassy and the Iraqi Parliament. And it was all under the noses of the American occupation. The American forces were unable to enter that neighbourhood. Now, when they took over that area, the local fighters who they usurped came to me and told me this shocking news. This was a massive development in the war, that the jihadis were now very clearly, palpably taking over. So I was taken in there by some insurgents to confirm this and to convey this to the world, convey this to the US military even. And it was in the process of doing that I was dragged from my car, hauled behind a building over a period of time, where a hastily slung execution banner was on a wall, and the men were there, the man with the knife, and they were going to film my beheading with my own camera. And it was my insurgent escort who stepped in and saved me and basically threatened these men that, you can kill this man, but he is my guest. And if you dishonour me, we will have a turf war. And reluctantly, they decided that on that moment, on that day, I wasn't worth inflicting a turf war that they'd only just finished winning. And through gritted teeth, they literally shoved me back into the car.
Look, I have absolutely no doubt that we have ourselves to blame for this. I was one of the sole voices, I guess, at the time of the Iraq War that opposed it openly, when both sides of politics actually were in favour of it. I thought the purpose of the first Gulf War was to eliminate the weapons of mass destruction and to eliminate or reduce their capacity to actually create them. So it didn't seem like a sensible argument. The link between Iraq and Al-Qaeda was pretty vague. I mean, Al-Qaeda no doubt launched the September 11 attack, but the link to Iraq was very tenuous. I was concerned that by going into Iraq at that stage, in what was in my mind an illegal war, would risk creating civil war in the name of democracy, and pretty much that's where I think we've ended up. And then we left without finishing the job in a military sense, so we've created another layer of complexity. And the justifications for why we were there kept changing at political level. When they found there were no weapons of mass destruction, it was another reason. Had to change, regime change, and then after regime change was pass the power back to the people of Iraq to govern themselves and provide their own security. I think that is a very, very sorry period of our international history. And Australia's role in that, I think, should be an embarrassment to all of us.